Hello and welcome to our webinar, Putting the I in AI, Enhancing Claims Decisions with Artificial Intelligence and Analytics. The topic for today's webinar builds on the discussion we recently held in our touchless claims webinar. To make end-to-end touchless claims handling a reality, decisions typically made by humans, like claims, triage, or loss evaluation, should be completed by the artificial intelligence and analytics tools that have become widely available to the industry. Today we will discuss the increasingly important roles of AI and predictive analytics are playing in claims handling and what carriers should expect as they adopt these technologies to digitally transform their businesses and meet customer expectations. Now before we get started, just a few housekeeping items for those of you on the phone. If you have a question for our speakers today, please use the Ask a Question feature on your screen at any point during the webinar, and we will respond to those questions during the Q&A session at the end. On your screen, you will also see an option called Vote. This is our live polling feature, which we will use in this webinar to get your thoughts on subjects related to the content. We've already activated the first poll of the webinar, so feel free to start voting now. I'd like to start by introducing our speakers today. My name is Gian Calvesbert, and I will be moderating today's conversation. As a member of Duck Creek's product marketing team, I have the opportunity to bring together and work with different subject matter experts within our company and across the industry to develop and deliver thought-provoking ideas that help carriers run their business. For that reason, I'm really excited to introduce Joe DeCigio and Jim Murphy, who have really great insights to share about AI and analytics and claims. Joe DeCigio is a principal product manager at Duck Creek. He has decades of experience in insurance technology leadership and business transformation. With expertise in in data and analytics, strategic leadership, commercial insurance, operations management, and transformation leadership. Prior to joining Duck Creek, he served as an insurance industry executive at IBM and FileNet, as well as a general manager and vice president at American Financial Group. Jim Murphy has a specialized master's degree in economic crime management and is a 30-year veteran of the insurance industry. After serving as a police officer in New England and spending years running a special investigations unit analyst team, he is now vice president of products at FRISS, helping insurers fight insurance fraud and making the insurance more honest. Before we start the discussion with Joe and Jim, we'd like to get a sense of what's on your mind and start with our poll question. So our first poll question asks, how do you envision AI and analytics improving claims handling? Will it be reducing claims handling expenses, achieving more consistent outcomes, enhancing customer experiences, or overcoming talent and loss gaps? And I'm seeing several of you have already started to respond, and we'll continue to give some time for the rest. Okay, I think we've got a good distribution of responses, but the majority of you are indicating that reducing claims expenses is the most prominent opportunity. So as you can tell by the results of this poll, there are a lot of ways AI can positively impact the business of claims. And so at this point, I'd like to bring in Jim and Joe to begin exploring that impact. So let's start with Jim. Why do you think AI offers so much potential value to claims handlers?
Thanks, Gian. It's interesting that the folks that were just answering the poll indicated expenses, and I'm actually going to touch upon that here in a second. So when I first started in claims, many years ago, it was mostly a manual process with a few basic rules, helped to assign new claims to the right person. Obviously, if that new assignment went to the wrong person, it was yet another manual process, transferring the file from one person to the other. Ultimately, upsetting the end user customer because they ended up having to speak to someone else. The file was transferred and things of that nature. So claims can be straight through processed. Some are more complex. Some need specialized handling using analytics, such as say a claim was identified having fraud. And really, it's how you can make the best use of your limited human resources. Again, back to utilizing AI. So there's also a concern if the claim is complex, albeit serious injury, making sure that, again, the fraud identification or coverage issue, it's going to go to the right person. And again, using AI could provide a consistent way of getting that file to the right person at the right time, which ultimately is going to make it more effective and efficient, and obviously reducing expenses. Joe, what do you think?
Great points, Jim. One case, we talk about AI, it's a technology, right? So it's a revolution in one sense. But I think it's important to ground ourselves in the idea that it really is a natural evolution of what our industry is trying to accomplish for years now, right? With very limited success. But one of the things we really kind of focused on, if we look at what we're trying to accomplish, we've been on the path to improve reserve settlement accuracy in claims, right? Inadequate reserves lead to unhappy insurance executives, as many of us know. And the goal is to pay the right amount, satisfying both the claimant and our employers, the carriers. So what's different now is the power of the technology. Communicating with clients, negotiating settlements, investigations are a few of the high potential manual processes you referenced, Jim. And all carriers have these. These processes include consuming large amounts of data, and AI offers a tremendous opportunity to help by leading with indicators about what the data is telling you. It allows you to consume and disseminate the real facts and the things that matter. When a claims adjuster can simplify and accelerate some of these processes, they can focus on the other tasks that are important to their job. Loss adjustment and satisfaction to customers are two key areas where we think AI can really help evolve the claims process. And we're seeing examples of that in the marketplace today. Transparency is another area where we can increase the customer experience. We've seen a lot of advertisements, for example, about mobile apps for claims via the competitors in the marketplace. And there's also the application of chatbots or live chat. AI can be applied to these interactions, providing either automatic responses, and it can range from basic communications to straight through claims estimates and settlements. We can also increase the accuracy of how claims handlers across the entire life cycle perform their tasks. When we set reserves initially, we're trying to set for the right amount, but we have limited information. AI can help accumulate that information and provide better decisions and help us achieve our key performance objectives, leaving the customer satisfied with their experience. AI solutions can also help carriers by focusing on the experience itself, providing those accurate and timely estimates, connecting claimants with service providers as part of an ecosystem, and helping them understand their options to restore themselves back to their full values.
Actually, Joe, just one thing you mentioned as far as large data. I know working with large data, especially from a fraud detection standpoint, a normal person is not going to be able to analyze and detect any type of complex fraud patterns within the claims data. So I think utilizing AI can certainly help find the proverbial needle in the haystack. And again, incorporating this type of technology also ensures that every claim is checked every time. And that's really just on top of what the frontline claims adjusters are already doing. It's very complex work with multiple different tasks that they're doing. And it just really helps to simply look at the issues that may be overlooked because, again, of the complexity.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like traditional claims handling processes are open to disruption and that AI and analytics have the capabilities to transform the business. But this disruption needs to be managed to ensure expected returns on investment and avoid negatively impacting the customer experience. So our next question is for you, Joe. Can you talk about what should carriers be thinking about before incorporating AI into claims and maybe suggest some best practices?
Yeah, so I would start with really understanding what AI can do. Typically, any particular AI will do one thing well. But AI can assist in either decision making, it can make decisions itself, or it can provide services. So when you evaluate what it can do, you first need to focus on where you want to improve. we suggest starting with a clear business objective. For example, you could be looking to create a more intimate experience with your insureds, but perhaps you are simply looking to lower costs. Either way, start small, think small, focus on one process that you know you can improve. It could be as simple as the initial assignment of a case to an adjuster and sending that case to straight through fully automated processes. One of the keys to consider with AI is that it is an iterative learning machine. When the machine starts working, you can start measuring its success against your established key performance indicators to ensure that you're seeing the results you expect. So as AI improves itself, learning from its experience, perhaps identifying new indicators that were previously unknown, they can be reapplied for better results. You also want to make sure that your models are not overly biased. For example, an overly zealous focus on cost reduction could lead to hurting your customer satisfaction scores. Jim, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, obviously, you don't want to. You want to be very customer-centric. That said, you also want to make sure that you're controlling not only your expenses, but the cost of, or at least the payout. So, working with various customers and clients over the course of time, I always talk about what is your fraud challenge? What are you looking to do to solve for that? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a fraud challenge, but it's any business challenge. How are you going to utilize AI to solve for that? Really, once you've identified, that, it's just a matter of, looking at the various data points that the client has to be able to create, that particular model. And again, working in fraud, it would be obviously a fraud model. So, I also get asked a lot of times, well, what happens if I don't have, a lot of data or things of that nature? Well, there's actually a couple things. First off, you can, come up with some, basic business rules and then utilize, say, third-party data vendors to come up with at least something you can look at and, identify fraud. And then once all of that is done and completed over the course of time, then it's a matter of looking at what was scored and be able to utilize that, those fraud flags in the sense of what you've investigated to be able to create models. And again, detecting the fraud throughout the life cycle of that claim. If the end user or the customer client does have vast amount of data, you can not only look at claims and maybe come out and look at underwriting data to be able to really get a holistic view of what's going on and look for those complex trends and patterns that I mentioned earlier. And then start creating and incorporating AI is the best way forward to identify and detect fraud that normally the human eye wouldn't be able to find. So ultimately, that would be how I would go about speaking with customers and clients, utilizing AI again to solve for that larger business challenge, albeit say fraud or some other complex issue. Back to you, Joe.
Yeah, so thanks, Gene. If we can go to the next slide, I think one challenge we need to consider with AI relates to the fact that it does involve data and large amounts of data, in many cases enormous amounts of data. So the advanced analytics can now process and augment additional data sources beyond what you have. It can be overwhelming, but we do suggest that you start with your own data. Having your own solid data, getting your data house in order, is somewhat of a prerequisite to really take advantage of AI. Every carrier makes decisions, has their own business rules, has their own guiding principles. And those are important to how AI works for you. You can get a lot of information straight from your core systems, policy, billing, claims. You may have party systems that manage your customer relationships. All those pieces of information are important and important to aggregate. The data then can be used to train the models that you do select, whether you develop your own AI or you acquire some of those that are in the marketplace and leverage them in your organization. You can easily run those models against your processes again, as we'll talk about in a little bit, about how to get started. But it really is the application of the AI that transforms the business. What decision are you assisting? What decision are you making? What insights are you providing? This is an iterative process, and again, taking advantage of the learning, a full cycle, a simple diagram to help you digest this. As you consume your analytics, you want to feed the results back into your data ecosystem, and then feed that back to the AI so that it can continue to learn and refine itself. The process will provide insights and allow you to enhance other processes. So again, you can then expand from where you start, from where you land, and expand and apply new AI modules that help further refine your processes. Jim, how would you help a client get started with something like this?
I certainly would, talk again as far as the business challenge and solving for that, and just really, again, look at the different data points. As you mentioned, there's a lot of data, and really getting into the weeds and saying, well, how are we going to solve for that? We'll use these various data points, and then ultimately developing a model that's going to show really good results. Again, detecting fraud, or even on the other side of the coin, I often talk to chief claims officers that, yes, detecting fraud is important, but it's also being able to string through process, again, using the data available, being able to pay those claims quickly, which ultimately is going to save on expenses. It's also going to reduce, your loss ratio, and ultimately, at the end of the day, improve your customer experience. And I think all of that's very, very important, and usually that resonates crystal clear with any type of executive within the insurance carrier.
Those are all good insights about how to think about preparing for integrated AI, I think from both a business and technology perspective. At the same time, we know that incorporating AI requires some investment, and carriers must be confident that the investment's worth it. So, Jim, can you help us understand what the results of those investments are and the kind of benefits carriers can expect once AI is being used in claims handling?
Well, definitely seeing improvements in the overall metrics. I think you start there. Looking at reduction in loss ratio. Obviously, if you're over 100%, you're not profitable. You need to look at, why that is, whether it be, how you handle a claim as far as payout, whether it be, fraud that's, kind of hitting the bottom line of the company. But it's really having that trust in AI, seeing identifiable and actionable insights, being able to use those models for output to understand, what's going on and how that's really being positively impactful to the overall organization. And then, just again from a fraud perspective, looking at the fraud detection tool, which is really solely going to add benefit by identifying, complex fraud through AI and being successful in identifying those schemes that may not have been detected early on or before you put or introduced AI within the overall environment. And then I guess the neat thing is that AI and machine learning automatically updates the model. So it just, again, getting ahead of the fraudsters and able to detect fraud from the start. And actually, one other way of measuring success is, when you see kind of a change in your overall culture, desire to use technology to innovate and make the business better. Again, trust on the AI from top to bottom. Albeit organizational structure changes. Teams evolving from siloed departments to being innovative and focused product teams. And then AI, I think, can definitely bridge the gap within those organizations, siloed or not, and relying on AI to look at both underwriting and claims data for business learnings, which ultimately helps in the competitive advantage with the other insurers that they're in the market with. And then bottom line is that those actual insights makes the company more effective and efficient, as well as customer-centric, and as we said earlier, as far as reducing expenses, which will affect the bottom line and make the organization overly profitable. Joe?
Yeah, I would probably just state a lot of what you said somewhat, differently, perhaps categorically, right? So one of the key benefits from AI is consistency. So whether you're using it for fraud detection or referrals to SIU, for payment accuracy or reserve estimations, you'll immediately begin to see some of its ability and absorb those facts into your processes. It provides guidance in a more consistent way, and you should be able to see the results pretty quickly. Another key dimension is the impact on time, right? So it does speed up decision making. Humans take a lot of time to process information. AI can do that nearly instantaneously. On top of speed, AI can format, present information in ways that make it easy to consume for humans, right? It can highlight key areas. It can suggest next steps. With the adjuster's decision-making being accelerated, they can focus on other tasks. Faster cycle times do result in cost reduction, right? So I emphatically support your idea that it does reduce costs. Everyone benefits therefore from AI. One key understanding is the benefit would be how AI can differentiate your employer in the marketplace, right? With models and insights provided by AI, utilizing your data, you can do things differently than your competitors. You can provide a different, truly delightful claim experience, service above and beyond all else. Underlying all this is financial performance, which is obviously an important advantage in the marketplace. Jim?
Yep, it's clear. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
No,
you
no,
want
that's right. Go
something
ahead.
to
Go ahead, Gene.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, well, I think it's clear from me what I've heard about your experience working with carriers is that there is a lot of value in integrating AI into claims, and the journey is worth it. But every journey needs a starting point. So how about we wrap up this webinar by offering some ideas about how carriers can begin. So Joe, what do you believe are the proper first steps for carriers starting their AI journey?
So my best suggestion is don't start with a big bang, right? Pick something that you can put your arms around, a place to start. Assignment is one of the most obvious. Look in the InsurTech marketplace. There are a number of good providers out there, for example, fraud, that can get you started very quickly. AI can help with something like adjuster assignment, not only grading the complexity of the claim, but matching it to the skill base of your available adjusters. Also taking into account their current workload, right? Those are three dimensions that are important in assigning a claim to a particular adjuster. The current state of AI applications allow each to do well. You may need to assemble a portfolio of those for various providers. You can build your own. Apply those solutions to the important parts of your business. That's where I would suggest getting started.
And just to add to that, and I agree with what you said, Joe, again, right to the bottom line, identifying business challenges. It doesn't have to be huge, but you got to start somewhere, and using AI to solve for that. As you slowly but surely progress, and you start seeing, great results, just continue to look at new ways to use AI to better your business. And then the last point I had is get started with AI pilot to show quick results. I'll pass it back to Jan.
So thanks, Jim and Joe. I think both of you have shared a great perspective on the subject. At this point of the webinar, we'd like to start the Q&A portion. So as a reminder, please use the Ask a Question feature on the screen to submit your questions. We've already gotten a few, so how about we start this one from Joe? How can I implement AI in the claims process if I don't have enough data, or my data is unorganized or spans legacy systems?
Yeah, I could take that. So the best way, if you don't have a lot of great data or whatever, I would suggest, especially if it's fraud related, is just to come up with a number of different expert rules and couple that with external data sources. And I think the combination of those will at least get you started to be able to detect fraud. Once you start identifying fraud, inevitably you're going to have a number of claims where you can look at and start creating fraud models using AI at a later date. But, just a slow but sure process would be my recommendation to build it up.
I'd also suggest that it is important, right, for the long term, while you can get started, put some attention towards organizing your data. It doesn't have to be hard. There are ways to do that where you can aggregate data without it being organized. The other approach is to organize your data using some of the options that are available in today's marketplace, right? So Duck Creek actually offers one of those. But the idea is that you need to get your arms around at least some data, have some trust in it, so that your AI is more aligned with the outcomes that you expect. But as Jim pointed out, one of the things he alluded to, a proof of concept, right? Play with the data, see what it tells you, tune it, see how accurate it is. And you could start small. You don't have to have all of your data in place to begin to apply AI. You can use portions of it, and over time, there are options where you can augment your data with data from other sources. It can be purchased. There's publicly available data. The value in AI is its ability to consume these very large amounts of data. So you can filter out the noise over time by applying, an iterative approach to improving the data that you find relevant.
Thanks. I think I have a question that Jim would be very welcome to answer. Is it better to start an AI-based claims fraud solution with off-the-shelf model or a model that is tuned to the carrier's particular book of business?
Yeah, certainly. Great question. It's either way. You absolutely can use off-the-shelf. I think the most important part is, if you've got a challenge or a business challenge around fraud, do something. And that's what I when I worked for my company a long time ago, that's what we did. Started slow but sure and eventually worked our way up using predictive modeling and rules and a number of other different technologies. So, if you've got the bandwidth and whatever, yeah, certainly off the shelf if you've got some individuals. Just like Joe said, you can start small or a specific part as far as the data and use AI to, again, solve that business problem.
There may be one last more question. I think Joe might have some good insights. Other than fraud and assignment, can you suggest some other great places AI can be used in the claims process and recommendations for InsurTech?
This is an area I'd say is only limited by your imagination. If you look at, and it's easy to find the InsurTechs that are out there and the places that they have started to try to penetrate the marketplace. Many are what I would call fact-based sorts of solutions, largely about damages. So there's a number of AI tools out there to post a weather event, assess roof damage. There's others that will estimate damage to a vehicle through photo analysis. So, we didn't really talk about the capabilities of AI, but we're talking about unstructured data as well as structured data. So the ability to interpret a photograph, right, is an important feature of AI, and they're mature to a point, and they work pretty well, but you'll see a number of solutions in those areas. So we think damage estimation is one key area. I do believe that, we talk about the financials. How do you estimate? How do you understand what the damages are, particularly when we talk about non-physical damage? You talk about liability cases. Think about all the data points that AI can consume and help estimate. And again, so I'll just bring it back to, I think there's an endless set of opportunities. I think we'll continue to see the InsurTech marketplace and other providers develop a number of these AI modules that can be consumed by carriers. I also think you'll find a lot of ideas that would be available by talking to your actuaries. They'll have a lot of ideas about areas where AI can assist. So those would be some of the things I would point to.
Well, Thanks, Jim and Joe, and I think we're running out of time, so I want to thank all of you on the phone for your questions and participating in today's webinar. Well, we still had several questions in the queue, but unfortunately we're out of time. But if you've submitted a question and we didn't get to it, we will respond shortly via email. You will also receive a copy of the slides and access to the webinar recording. Again, thanks for joining us, and now this concludes our webinar. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you.